The wind blew harshly across the dusty streets of Dry Creek, carrying with it the stench of neglect and drought. Mason Cole, a man who had lived his life on the edge of solitude, walked with a quiet precision, his boots crunching against the sun-baked dirt. He had long given up on people. He had given up on kindness. His world was simple: work, whiskey, and the silence that no human voice could disrupt. That is, until he heard it, a tiny voice, almost swallowed by the wind. "Sir, I'll work for just food." Mason froze mid-step, a child's voice weak and trembling, yet filled with a courage he hadn't felt in years. Slowly he turned. There she stood, a girl no older than 10, dressed in a faded, ragged dress that hung loosely over her thin frame. Her small bare feet were cracked, the skin toughened by long walks on the dusty roads. She held her arms tightly around her stomach, not for comfort, but to hold in the hunger gnawing at her from the inside. Her eyes, though tired and sunken, met his without fear. Exhaustion had not broken her courage. And in those eyes, Mason saw a reflection of a truth he had long tried to bury. Life could be harsh, and yet the smallest spark of hope could survive even in the worst conditions. "What kind of work?" Mason's voice was low, gravelly, unused to softness. "Anything," the girl replied quickly, almost rehearsed. "I'll sweep, carry water, feed animals. I just need food." "I have no money, please." Her stomach growled loudly, betraying the discipline she had maintained so far, but she didn't flinch. Mason studied her silently. He had seen adults beg, men shaking and dishonest, but never a child like this, so small yet so unbroken. He swallowed hard. "Where's your family?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Mama. She died last winter. Fever." Her voice quivered slightly, but she continued, "Papa, he went to find work in the spring." "He never came back." Mason's chest tightened. He had buried loss before, hidden it under years of work and bottles of whiskey. But now, standing in front of him, was a child who had lost everything, yet still stood upright, asking nothing but food. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Lila," she replied. Mason's jaw clenched. He wanted to say something, to do something, yet words felt insufficient. Then, almost instinctively, he lifted the half-empty glass of whiskey from the porch railing and carried it inside. That small act, setting it down, stepping back, was the first moment of choice in years. He stepped aside, allowing her a place in his life. "Come inside," he said finally. Her eyes widened. "I can work first." "No, eat first." The house smelled of old wood, dust, and something strangely comforting, a pot of stew simmering on the stove. Mason filled a bowl and set it in front of her. Lila stared, her hands shaking, afraid the food might vanish if she touched it too quickly. When she finally ate, she did so slowly, savoring each bite like a prayer. Mason watched quietly, pretending not to notice the thinness of her arms, the hollow of her cheeks, the way she glanced up at him after every few spoonfuls. When she finished, she whispered, "Thank you." "You can stay the night," Mason said. Her eyes widened again. "Just the night?" "We'll see," he replied. That night, Mason sat on the porch long after the lamps were blown out. Inside, Lila slept curled on the spare bed, the first full meal she had had in days, letting her body rest. Mason told himself it was temporary, just one night, just one meal. But as the hours passed, memories he had buried clawed their way back. Another small bed, another laughter, another grave. He had sworn never to care again. And yet 6 simple words had cracked open everything he had sealed shut. "I'll work for just food." Morning broke with a pale golden light. Lila rose early, her tiny body still weak but her determination unbroken. She began sweeping, carrying water, feeding the few animals Mason had left. Mason watched in quiet awe. Her diligence was beyond her years, each movement precise, careful, purposeful. Days turned into weeks. Mason's world, once hollow and cold, began to feel alive again. Lila's soft humming filled the house, the sound threading through silence like a lifeline. Mason began to cook more, clean more, repair fences he had neglected. He had never realized how much a single human presence could pull a man from the edge of despair. Then disaster struck. One morning, Lila collapsed while carrying water. Her small body shivered violently, her cheeks hot, her eyes dull with fever. Mason caught her before she hit the ground, his heart hammering with fear he had long buried. He inspected her carefully. She was burning up, weak, her breath shallow. A sense of dread filled Mason. This was no ordinary sickness. Town gossip and past rumors whispered in his mind this disease could spread. It could kill. It could destroy everything. The following day, a few townspeople arrived, their faces pale and anxious. That girl. She's contagious! Take her away, Mason, or we'll all get sick, they demanded. Mason stood his ground. She has no one else. I won't abandon her, he said quietly. And so, with a heavy heart and a deeper resolve, Mason made the choice that would define their lives. He packed his belongings, took Lila in his arms, and left Dry Creek behind. The journey was brutal. Supplies were limited, weather harsh, and the terrain unforgiving. Each step forward was a test of courage, strength, and endurance. Mason's own health suffered as he carried the girl, hunted for water and food, and navigated the wilderness. Nights were sleepless, days long, yet neither of them gave up. At one point, Mason became weak, his body trembling. Lila, still frail but stronger than before, held his hand and whispered, "Sir, I won't let you die. You've kept me alive. Now let me help you." That moment, the reversal of roles, the child protecting the adult, was a heart-wrenching twist that Mason could never have imagined. It was the kind of emotional depth that makes life's fragility stark, yet beautiful. After weeks, they finally arrived at a secluded clearing, far from the town's judgment. Mason built a small, sturdy home. He administered medicine to Lila, helped her regain strength, and watched her slowly recover. The bond between them deepened, not merely as guardian and child, but as a father and daughter, forged in trials, danger, and shared sacrifice. By the end of Chapter 1, Lila's fever had broken, her health slowly returning. Mason had chosen isolation over safety, risk over indifference, humanity over fear, and in doing so he had rediscovered something he had long thought lost: hope. The first rays of dawn stretched over the isolated clearing, brushing the small cabin Mason had built with golden light. Silence ruled the land around them, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a hawk. Inside, Mason sat on the wooden porch, staring at the horizon, his hands resting on his knees. He had grown thinner during the journey, his shoulders hunched, not just from fatigue, but from the weight of responsibility he had chosen to carry. Lila, once frail and trembling, now slept peacefully in her small bed, her chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of health returning. Mason's eyes lingered on her, heart tight with a mixture of relief, fear, and disbelief. She had survived what he had feared would end her life, and in doing so, she had awakened something in him, a spark of purpose, a reason to live that had been missing for years. Days blended into weeks. Mason spent every moment ensuring Lila's full recovery. He scavenged for herbs, cooked simple meals, and meticulously checked her temperature several times a day. The isolation, though harsh, was necessary. The sickness she had carried was contagious, and he had chosen a life away from Dry Creek to protect both them and the townspeople. Yet each passing day brought new challenges. Storms tore through the clearing, food supplies ran dangerously low, and Mason himself weakened under the strain. One afternoon, as Lila began to sit up on the porch, she watched Mason struggle with splitting firewood. She hesitated, then said softly, "Sir, let me help." Mason shook his head. "No, Lila, you need your strength. I'll handle this." She frowned, determination flashing in her eyes. "I may be small, but I can't let you suffer for me. You saved me. Now it's my turn." Mason looked at her and felt a lump in his throat. The child he had rescued was now trying to save him. For the first time in his life, he realized that love was not weakness. It was reciprocity, courage, and risk. As the days passed, Lila grew stronger, her laughter slowly returning, echoing through the small cabin like a fragile melody of hope. Mason, too, began to recover, though he remained cautious. Every cough, every sudden weakness, reminded him of the fragility of life, of the stakes they had, both faced. Then came the day of the first real test. Mason, exhausted and dehydrated, tripped while carrying water from a nearby stream. He fell heavily, injuring his side. Pain shot through him, and he could barely breathe. Lila ran to his side, her small hands gripping his arm. "Sir, you can't leave me!" "You promised we'd survive this together," she shouted, tears in her eyes. Mason forced a laugh, masking the searing pain. "I won't leave you, Lila, but we have to be careful. Even I am not invincible." That night, as Mason lay on the bed beside her, both weak but alive, they shared stories of the past. Mason spoke of Dry Creek, of loss, of the loneliness that had consumed him. Lila spoke of her parents, of the fear she had carried, and of the small glimmers of hope that had kept her alive. You know, she whispered, I never thought anyone would fight for me. You risked everything. And you risked your life every day, Mason replied. We saved each other. This moment, the acknowledgement of mutual courage, was the emotional heart of the story. For viewers, it reinforced the stakes. The journey had been about more than survival. It had been about trust, sacrifice, and love against all odds. Weeks turned into months. Mason taught Lila skills for independence, how to find clean water, identify edible plants, maintain the cabin, and protect herself. Each lesson was a reminder that survival was not just physical, but mental and emotional. Lila soaked in every word, every gesture, determined to repay the life Mason had given her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the clearing in shades of crimson and gold, Mason made a decision that would seal their future. He knelt beside Lila, holding her small hands in his own. You've survived, Lila. You're strong. You've earned more than shelter, more than protection, he said quietly. I want you to stay with me always. As my daughter. Lila's eyes widened, emotion shining through the tears she had fought to hold back. You mean it? Mason nodded. Yes, no matter what. This is our life now. It was a moment of triumph, a resolution of all the tension, fear, and struggle that had defined their journey. For viewers, this was the payoff, the emotional reward that makes a story unforgettable. Yet, even with this promise, danger was never far. Storms tore through the clearing and wild animals prowled at the edges. Mason and Lila faced the harsh realities of survival daily. One particularly violent storm forced them to seek shelter in a nearby cave for 2 nights, rationing what little food they had. Each lightning strike and thunderclap reminded them that life was fragile, that the world could not be tamed, and that resilience was their only weapon. During one long sleepless night, Lila whispered, Sir, I'm not afraid anymore. I know we can survive anything. Mason looked at her, pride swelling in his chest. That's my girl. Courage doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you keep going anyway. By the time the next spring arrived, Lila was fully healthy, her eyes bright and her spirit unbroken. Mason had recovered too, though his hair had grown longer, his face weathered by the months of hardship. Their bond had deepened beyond mere survival. They were family, not by blood, but by choice, by sacrifice, and by shared suffering. The final challenge came when the first travelers approached the edge of the clearing. Townspeople, curious and suspicious, had followed faint tracks, hoping to confront Mason and Lila. Mason stood firm, Lila by his side. This is our home now, Mason said firmly. You can't come here. We're safe, and we will stay that way. The travelers hesitated, then left, realizing the stubbornness and determination in Mason's eyes. For the first time, Mason and Lila were truly alone, free from the judgment and fear of the outside world. In the years that followed, Mason and Lila cultivated a life of simple joy. The cabin expanded slightly, a small garden flourished, and Lila grew into a courageous, compassionate young woman. Mason had found in her the daughter he had never had, the family he thought he had lost forever. And Lila had found in Mason a protector, a guide, and a father in every sense of the word. The story's final message was clear. Small courage can change lives, sacrifice can create miracles, and love can flourish even in the harshest landscapes. Lila had survived because Mason chose compassion over fear. Mason had survived because Lila had given him hope. Together, they had built more than a home. They had built a life worth living. As the sun rose over the clearing, spilling golden light across the cabin and the surrounding fields, Mason looked at Lila and whispered, We made it. Together. Lila smiled, eyes shining. Together always. And so the tale of the starving girl and the lonely cowboy ended not with despair, but with triumph. It was a story of sacrifice, courage, and the enduring power of human connection. A story that reminded everyone watching that even in the darkest times, hope can survive, love can endure, and the smallest voice can echo louder than the storm. If this story inspired you, leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more heart-touching tales. Because every story matters, and every life has a hero waiting to be found.